Spoilers. How often have you heard the phrase, "you missed the point by idolizing them"? I ask because I really hate people who say this. First off, who are you to tell me that I'm enjoying something the wrong way? People who had nothing to do with a given work's creation will assert this authority over you, smugly pushing up their glasses while linking quotes from the director/author/what have you. It's one thing to argue over different interpretations, but people who rag on about media literacy act as if their interpretation is the only correct one. Even worse, they don't apply this standard consistently. It doesn't matter that J.R.R. Tolkien was a devout Catholic all his life. Frodo and Sam were gay for each other, you homophobe. These people clearly understand that authorial intent is not the only way to interpret a work of fiction. They just want to power trip. Second off, saying that you missed the point by idolizing them is itself missing the point in almost all cases. The characters that this phrase is applied to are cool, confident, attractive, successful, and sometimes genuinely heroic. 99% of the time, you are meant to sympathize with them and even admire them to a certain degree. You're just not supposed to emulate them. But that's the thing. If no one wanted to emulate them, then their stories would be completely pointless. Who would ever be evil if doing bad things made you broke, ugly, and miserable from the beginning? It's an unfortunate fact of reality that being amoral is often rewarded, and so we need stories to remind us of the true drawbacks of being a bad person. Media literacy, as used by these types of people, is an Orwellian term that means the opposite of what it says it does. These people don't actually examine the text of the work, they examine what other people said about the work. They go along with the herd of the intellectual elite, who grasp the true meaning of movies like Watchmen or Starship Troopers that the peons couldn't possibly comprehend. But when you actually go in and examine the characters and stories the media literacy crowd is so quick to condemn, you quickly see that they're the ones with the surface level interpretation. So let's go deeper. Let's break down what makes idol characters so compelling by breaking them down into different categories. This video will cover the first, while part 2 will cover the second. Now let's get started. Part 1. Characters who are just straight up correct. Sometimes, despite being treated like a villain by the narrative, a character has genuinely good arguments that no one can rebut, or their actions come across as noble, or at least not nearly as bad as others around them. Sometimes, the world a character inhabits requires things of them that would definitely be immoral in our world, but in their world are necessary for survival. These are the characters fans will say did nothing wrong. When it comes to having good arguments, the character I would say most exemplifies this is Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Tyler rejects the materialism and celebrity worship of the modern world for one important reason. One day, you're going to die. From his introduction, Tyler is uninterested in pretending to be interested. He cares about actually living instead of merely consuming. He has the narrator punch him first because he realizes that there's value in losing, in experiencing pain. Like the Unabomber, he sees that modern life takes away your power by shielding you from all the consequences of your actions. Unless you're astoundingly unlucky, no one watching this video has ever starved or has ever been in danger of starving. Fighting is the only way to do something that's truly meaningful, something where you're truly in control, acting on your own behalf, and for your own benefit. Everything else is an illusion. The things you own end up owning you. Anti-materialism is not a very original message, but the way Tyler presents it is. Owning a thing makes it an obligation. You are responsible for the maintenance and repairs of the thing. You are responsible for taking it with you when you move and for discarding it when you no longer wish to possess it. Owning enough things will, in a very literal sense, restrict your freedom. But there's a spiritual element to it as well. Your things weren't really purchased with money, they were purchased with your time. The one thing you can never get back. Is it really worth it to trade an irreplaceable resource for a replaceable object? On some level, we must all make this trade in order to survive, but living is more than surviving. For this reason, Tyler's crusade is about giving men their time and freedom back. Except, he's not really giving it to them, he's demanding that they take it back. The power process is useless if you're not a willing participant. That's why he makes the first and second rules of Fight Club a vow of secrecy. The club is only open to those who can be trusted, to those who truly want it. He also goes and reminds people in a very visceral way that their lives could end at any time. So if they're not living their lives the way they wanted when Tyler checks up on them, he'll just straight up murder them. Despite this, Tyler never actually kills anyone. He inadvertently gets Bob killed and messes up Angel's face, but neither were directly his fault. Bob got shot on a mission, and Angel was beaten up by a split personality. Even after he becomes a full-on terrorist, he makes sure the buildings he's rigged to blow are cleared of any people who aren't part of Project Mayhem. And while people have argued that it's still probably going to kill people down in the streets below, I don't think it's a stretch to believe that his guys have probably cleared the streets too. In the time since the movies come out, has materialism gotten better, worse, or stayed the same? I think if you asked random people on the street, most of them would respond with one of the latter two. Tyler's message resonates despite his evil actions. He's never hypocritical, he generally improves the lives of the people around him, and in the end, he essentially wins. All but one of the banks blow up, and given that the narrator is now successfully ordering the members of Project Mayhem around, it seems that he's become synthesized into the narrator's personality, striking a healthy balance between his freedom and the narrator's neuroticism. This is the point the media literacy dorks are missing. On the spectrum between the narrator and Tyler, most men are closer to the narrator. They need a bit of Tyler to be more masculine, less inhibited, and less stressed about material things. People who idolize Tyler Durden are seeking self-improvement, and responding to this by pointing to Tyler's terrorism and cult leader status is like telling an obese person trying to lose weight that they're going to end up as an anorexic. Let's move on to our next example, and probably one of the most contentious. Rorschach from Watchmen. Rorschach falls under the umbrella of characters who, despite their flaws, come across as noble and heroic. And despite what you may think, Alan Moore 100% intended this. Alan Moore is a good writer and a good storyteller. The idea that he somehow didn't know that Rorschach would appeal to people is ludicrous, but everyone keeps bringing up that same quote where Moore supposedly tells Rorschach fans to keep away from him. I meant him to be a bad example, but I have people come up to me in the street saying, "I am Rorschach, that is my story." And I'll be thinking, yeah, great, can you just keep away from me and never come anywhere near me again for as long as I live? There are two main problems here. First off, this quote keeps on getting misinterpreted and taken out of context. Moore supposedly said this in 2008, over 20 years after Watchmen came out, when Moore was becoming increasingly disillusioned with DC. Watchmen was and is one of the most popular comics in history, with thousands of people talking to him and asking him about it. The man was probably just tired. And more importantly, that's not the full quote. The full quote says this. So I thought, alright, if there was a Batman in the real world, he probably would be a bit mental. He wouldn't have time for a girlfriend, friends, a social life, because he'd just be driven by getting revenge against criminals dressed up as a bat for some reason. He probably wouldn't be very careful about his personal hygiene. He'd probably smell. His voice probably would have become weird with misuse. His phraseology would be strange. I wanted to kind of make this like, yeah, this is what Batman would be in the real world. In this whole quote, he doesn't say that Rorschach isn't a hero, he just says that he's a mental basket case, which is true, and he doesn't much want to associate with people who identify as a mental basket case, which is reasonable. People act as if this quote is a full-on condemnation of Rorschach and everything he represents, when in actuality, Moore greatly respected the work of Steve Ditko. Ditko created Mr. A, Rorschach's primary inspiration, and said that he liked Rorschach's portrayal in Watchmen. Moore likewise praised Ditko, saying, Steve Ditko is completely at the other end of the political spectrum from me, but I have a great deal of respect for the man, and certainly respect for his artwork, and the fact that there's something about his uncompromising attitude that I have a great deal of sympathy with. Even if they have morals you don't agree with, a person with a strong moral code is a person who has a big advantage in today's world. Does this sound like someone who hates Rorschach? There's another, even more important thing about using this quote to show that Alan Moore hated Rorschach. It might not even exist. While doing research for this video, I tracked down the primary source this quote supposedly originates from. A series of YouTube videos by one of Moore's fellow artists, Lejeune Pindling. All of these videos have been taken down, and apparently no one actually has a transcript of the full interview. So the fact that this is the one quote someone managed to save is highly suspect. We can never go back and verify unless I could speak to Alan Moore directly, which, probably isn't happening. And now we have hundreds of incestuously self-referential articles talking about a quote that may or may not even exist. Both lovers and haters of Alan Moore are arguing over an illusion. What's not an illusion is the actual text itself. By reading Watchmen, you can easily see that Rorschach is not meant to be a bad faith parody of Batman or Mr. A. He's simply meant to be more realistic. Hundreds of works since Watchmen try to imitate it by doing this gritty deconstruction of superheroes without ever realizing what made Watchmen work. Rorschach's backstory is meant to be like that of Batman's, a childhood marked by tragedy and trauma, resulting in a man resolved to do what's necessary to prevent evil. Except, instead of a mega-rich scion, it's an average kid from New York experiencing tragedies that are far more common than murder: alcoholism, abuse, and bullying. Likewise, his response to these tragedies is more realistic as well. He doesn't have the resources to fly out to Tibet to train with monks. He simply tracks down murderers and rapists and straight up kills them. While Rorschach has bad tendencies, he's never portrayed as irredeemable. His flaws are what make him human. His tunnel vision, his lack of regard for personal boundaries, these are all things that normal people struggle with. His fellow heroes have flaws too. Dan is weak-willed, John believes everything he does is predestined, and Lori has a rather rocky relationship with her mother. What's more, all of the characters are aware of their flaws, and that includes Rorschach. He never pretends to be perfect, and he admits to Dan that he can be hard to get along with. Rorschach is a hero because none of his flaws get in the way of his unwavering commitment to justice. However flawed his understanding of justice may be, he does protect people, and he puts in the work to figure out who killed the comedian. Being a hero in this universe sucks. Most of the original masks hung up their capes due to a lack of costumed villains and because of internal issues. Rorschach isn't like that. He doesn't do it for the money or prestige. He simply does what he feels is right. And despite what you may think, Alan Moore respects that. Now, let's take a character that the author actually does somewhat despise and resent. Nicole from Class of '09. Nicole fits into this category of characters who are entirely justified by the crapsack world they live in. Other characters in this category include the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k, Derek Vineyard from American History X, and the Terran Federation from Starship Troopers. In all three cases, the protagonists are extremely racist and xenophobic, but the people/creatures they're bigoted against really are out to get them, and extending the olive branch has negative results. Nicole is similar to this in that she's written as bigoted against men, in a world where every single male really is either a pedophile, a crook, extremely violent, or is some kind of degenerate. Of course, she doesn't really treat women any better. People in general only exist to her so far as they can help her get what she wants, with Jekka being a possible exception. But then again, most of the women aren't that much better. Pretty much everyone Nicole decides to go after, besides Ari, absolutely deserves it. And what's more, successfully getting one over on them often leads to a good ending. Nicole waging a libelous lawsuit against the school gets all the pedos arrested, and a settlement that sends her all the way to LA to hang out with Nicole Richie. Getting Kyler to accidentally kill himself either makes you the valedictorian by graduation, or allows you to make a successful living as the founder of r/female dating strategy. On the other hand, trying to be genuinely nice to people results in Nicole's suicide. So, what moral lesson are we meant to take from this? It's possible that Nicole was written like this because Max Fields, the author of the game, was living out a wish fulfillment fantasy through her. On Reddit, one of his previous friends claims that he wanted to be the bully in high school, but he never was because he lacked the social skills to do so. This same friend also replied to the question of, is the game a version of reality he wishes happened? With yes. Now, these accusations could be entirely baseless, but Fields being a hypocrite, treating Nicole as his ideal self while not actually wanting people to emulate her, would explain the dip in quality between the re-up and the flip side. Oh, you thought Nicole was so cool, huh? Well, now she's gonna give foot jobs to Jeffrey and Jekka's dad. Bet you feel stupid now, you pedophiles. Funny how this came out in the same year as Joker Folie à Deux, but that'll be for another video. The flip side ends with Max directly stating to the player that everything that happens to you is your fault. It's our own choices that determine our destiny and no one else's. That's a message I agree with, but the way it's presented is just dumb. Making bad, immoral choices is a great way to succeed in this game. I distinctly remember trying to be as much of an asshole as possible in my first playthrough and getting the graduation ending. There's an old adage in writing called show don't tell, but actually showing Nicole suffering consequences for her actions wouldn't be nearly as fun for Max as showing her riding high for extended periods of time before telling us afterwards that, oh, she totally got comeuppance later on. And that's only when she actually gets a bad ending. It's kind of like the censored Chinese ending of Fight Club, where instead of the banks blowing up, it cuts to black and a bunch of text on screen explain that the authorities came in, saved everyone, and put the narrator in a mental hospital. It really is a tragic thing when creators hate their own fanbase. According to the Reddit MMA, Max Fields sabotages himself every time he gets too popular because he can't stand people enjoying the games the wrong way. I don't want to harp on this thread too much because it's pure hearsay, but it really does feel like the flip side. Okay, in the middle of writing this, I hopped on over to Max Fields' thread on Kiwi Farms, and I found this gem. Max Fields is suing the creator of the AMA thread to the tune of $357,000. This isn't meant to be a drama video, but to me, the AMA suddenly seems far more credible. As I was saying, the flip side is exactly like Joker 2, a bad faith effort to slander its predecessor through character assassination and shoddy storytelling. If you wanted to deconstruct Nicole, why not have her experience real consequences on screen? What if you introduced a genuine, morally upright character who acts as an antagonist against Nicole and actually wins? Bonus points if it's a male who's not a creep or a racist. To use the Joker as an analog again, look at Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. Instead of having the Joker raped, Moore lets Joker lay out his philosophy, shows us his backstory, and then has him genuinely lose. His plot to drive Commissioner Gordon insane fails because Gordon is a good man at heart who holds on to his principles. But having Nicole fail like this would get in the way of Max getting to be the cool bully instead of the lame nerd. Instead, we have Nicole exist in a world where she's always the smartest person in the room. Thanks to her cunning ruthlessness, she's always a step ahead of the men who want to sexually abuse her and the women who want to drag her down. She always has a stinging barb ready, and she always gets the last word. How are we not supposed to treat her as the hero? Why would we ever want her to change? There are many other characters like this, but I think I've made my point pretty well. Saying that you missed the point by idolizing them completely glosses over any critical examination of the character's words, actions, and the context that they're in. It's a thought-terminating cliche used by authors to avoid responsibility for their own creations. It used to be that, according to the Hays Code, you weren't allowed to portray criminals getting away with their actions on film. If a thief stole, he wasn't allowed to outrun the cops. If a cop was corrupt, once his superiors found out, he would be arrested, not covered for. The Hays Code was eventually discarded in favor of telling more interesting stories about morally gray characters. It was always understood that the reason such characters had been banned was because they were compelling, and the reason why the ban was lifted was because audiences were smart enough to distinguish right and wrong for themselves. But modern media literacy folk don't think like that. To them, audiences are filthy, unwashed masses who have to be lectured constantly. To them, liking a character who's written to be smart and attractive is a moral failing, and if they get their way, we'll eventually get a new Hays Code that's probably even worse than the original one. But more about that in part 2. Until next time, this is Apollyon Analysis.